Hello YouTubers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host, Novus Gorvius. So, as you can see by the memorabilia on my desk, this video we're going to be talking about the Transformers movies, more specifically, what comes next after Bumblebee. Now you might be wondering what the hell is going on with all of this. Anyone who watched the introduction video to this channel will know that during it, my old friend Henry suggested as we go along to have different items items along the desk, and so far this looks like a pretty good setup, even though it's a bit overwhelming. But yeah, that's this video we're going to be talking about what comes next after Bumblebee. So before we can really talk about the future, we must go back and look at how it all began for these franchise. Obviously, Transformers was popular from when the 80s animated movie came out. It really shot up and it kind of died down toward the start of 2000s. The shows then didn't really have the same appeal to people as G1 did. And so Hasbro, after their attempts to make a G.I. Joe movie, were pushed to decide. They decided to focus on Transformers. And Michael Bay was brought on board, and in 2007 we got the first Transformers live action movie. I will never forget that experience, because I was sitting in my living room across the way, 6-year-old me just casually looking at TV, and I saw a TV spot for this movie, and it blew me away. I was knocked into a whole other world. I just remember the scene where Bumblebee's in Sector 7, his mask comes down. I remember Optimus transforming. There's just so much stuff, and I was just so mind blown by this. And then I got it when it came out in DVD, because I was too young to see it in the cinema, I think. And I loved it. I was so fortunate to get the special features version, so I got to see the making of it. And that's what got me interested in acting and filmmaking ever since. This franchise has determined what I want to do with my life, and it's quite surreal in a way. This one small franchise did so much to me. And I remember I was, once again, when Revenge of the Fallen came out 2 years later, I was again watching TV. There was an ad for Bionicles came on. And I remember going, I was like, oh, kind of looks like Transformers, just the way it's done. Straight away afterwards, the TV spot for Revenge of the Fallen came on. I was like, the scene where Bumblebee fights Rampage in the desert, I remember seeing, I was like, oh my god, there's another Transformers coming. That's pretty cool. I got that when it came on DVD. I saw it and I knew by the ending, I was like, there's going to be a third one. I didn't hear anything about a third one until after my second time ever in the cinema. It was to see Kung Fu Panda, I believe. The cinema I was in, there used to be screens on the outside the entrance as you go in, and it was showing the building toppling scene from Dark of the Moon. Just from the visual style alone, I knew it was Transformers. I remember looking and being like, "Oh, is that Transformers?" Sure enough, it was, and man, it was crazy. I mean, there was so much debate over the title as well. Was it Dark of the Moon, Dark Side of the Moon? I knew from the ending of that, I was like, they can't end it here, they're gonna have to do another one. At least that was just my personal belief. Everyone around me was like, nah, it's finished. That was actually my favourite movie for a long time, until 3 years later. Age of Extinction came out. I remember hearing about that a couple of months before its release, that Mark Wahlberg was brought on board and Shia LaBeouf left, and I was like, how are you going to do Transformers without Shia LaBeouf? Doesn't make sense, but I remember when I first saw the TV spot for it and I heard the title, as I thought it was Native Extinction, it's Age of Extinction. And I was just blown away. I was like, the designs were completely different. Optimus got a complete retool, so did Bumblebee. And I remember I watched in the cinema and I stood up at the ending and I literally clapped out loud and said, best movie ever. Because to date, it's still my favourite movie of all time. You can't top this movie. Of course, the ending with Optimus going into space is what really set me onto my journey when after that I was like, I need to see Transformers 5. They need to make another one. I have to see what happens next. And I spent the next 3 years heavily involved. Literally every single detail. Every trailer, every news of a trailer, every rumor, I was on top of it. And then like 2 months before the movie's release is when I started buying the toys. I bought Optimus, I only got Megatron at Christmas, and I got this one when the first Transformers came out. I don't even remember, he's been in my room. He has his G1 head for anyone that notices. But yeah, long story short, Transformers The Last Night came out, and I was heavily disappointed by that. I was actually pretty angry when I left. That felt like a slap in the face, that movie. Like, after so much hype and anticipation, it just blew it out the window, and they ruined all potential for a good storyline and major. But anyway, that's just my personal experience with it. Now, what matters, after Transformers 4 came out, obviously Transformers Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction made a lot of money. Both those films grossed over 1 billion. So, to seeing how successful Marvel were, Paramount wanted to cash in on this. And so in 2015, they put together a writer's room. They got Michael Bay to put together a writer's room. And they got, 12 writers? They had, I know they had the writer from The Walking Dead, Robert Kirkman. They had Jeff Pinkner, who's the writer on Venom. They had, and obviously the writers who did The Last Night and who were doing Bumblebee. And they had some other famous writers as well. And it seems what they did is they wrote 10 movies for Transformers Cinematic Universe, and they were supposed to come out once every single year for the next 10 years. That was their plan. Transformers 5 had to do really good in order to justify all this money spent on this writer's room. And that was actually kind of why I was disappointed when the movie came out, because for the start of the Cinematic Universe, it wasn't doing very well. I kind of feel, looking back now, that Age of Extinction and The Last Night should have been shot back to back. Because they really didn't, it seems like they didn't know what they were doing with The Last Night. But anyway, I'm not here to rant about that. Long story short, Transformers The Last Night did not make the 2 billion Paramount were hoping for. It made 605 million worldwide, which is just over $500 million. To put that into perspective, Age of Extinction, I believe, made 5 times its budget back. The Last Night made twice its budget, just over twice its budget. So when you put it like that, it's quite a serious drop. And so all of their plans were like suddenly up in the air. A couple of months later, the writers' room were disbanded, and we heard Transformers, in March of this year, they announced like Transformers 6 wasn't going to happen. And all the other films, Transformers 6 I think was due for 2019, I'm not sure. So was Transformers 1, which was an entirely animated Cybertron movie, which I was so looking forward to. It was being filmed here in Ireland. It was going to be made entirely here. But it got scrapped, and then, 2020, I think there was like a Ancient Roman spin-off. Then 2021, another film I was hyped for was a crossover with G.I. Joe, which is actually part of the comic storyline, so it doesn't seem entirely too far-fetched. And like that film came close to being written. They had a script at one point, but they just scrapped it. That was before they actually cancelled the Cinematic Universe. But yeah, that film was cancelled, and 2022 was probably like Transformers 7 and then Transformers 8 or something. I don't know what was going on after that. There was a World War II movie about the jet guy you see in The Last Night. So there was so many films potentially that were cancelled because The Last Night did not do well, and it was devastating. And the only reason we're getting Transformers Bumblebee now is because, how should we say it, Bumblebee was pretty much in the editing room. They were done filming Bumblebee by the time they announced this, so it would just be a complete waste of money to scrap that. So they'll still make a bit of money back, so better a small bit than nothing. So Bumblebee, for now, is the last Transformers movie we know of that's coming out. Now that the whole history lesson's over, what next? Well, the previous 5 movies were done by Michael Bay. Bumblebee is the first Transformers movie to be directed by another director. It's being done by Travis Knight, and they went for a complete visual look, because this was supposed to be a prequel to the first Transformers, but it was written by Christina Hodson. But it seems like now they're going with a visual aesthetic of a reboot or remake, whatever you want to call it, but still being set in the I will try to think Bayverse. I don't really like that term, but set in the current continuity. But they don't really know what they're doing with them. We certainly don't know. Like it's really up in the air. It's kind of like Breath of the Wild for the Legend of Zelda franchise. Bumblebee is that for the Transformers movies, and it's something entirely brand new. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Anyone who's watching this video has probably watched the trailers, but in case you haven't, there's a whole. It goes back to the designs of the original '80s cartoon, and a lot of the characters in this movie have their original '80s designs, and a lot of people are happy about that. Like coming up onto the release of last night, I was getting skeptical, and many other people were, that this movie would not do well just because of the current view on the Transformers movies and people's interest. But with Bumblebee, it ticks all the boxes. They have the cast needed. They're appealing to the original fans. It's a smaller movie, and Michael Bay is gone, so that's going to appeal to a more general audience. And it's a family-friendly movie, so that and other factors. It takes all the boxes. This movie's going to do well. Made on a much lower budget, 78 million. This movie needs to make around, I think it's 200 to 400 million to be a success, and considering the lowest Transformers movie made over $500 million, things are looking really good for Bumblebee. But what then? Bumblebee comes out to massive success. What happens now? Transformers 6, this is a very difficult question to answer, because even though their financial report came out recently, Hasbro, and they mentioned like Transformers 6 was actually postponed to 2020 because Bumblebee was shifted to Christmas instead of a summer release. And they put that as their reason, but you also hear that they don't want to do Transformers 6 without Michael Bay. And Michael Bay seems adamant he's not coming back. So, and I think after the last night, people don't want him back. Even someone who loves his directional style like I did, it's best put aside. Although I would like to see Transformers 6 just tie it all up. So Transformers 6, it's very difficult to answer that question. It seems more likely they'll do smaller films in a reboot kind of style. I don't think it'll be a full reboot, because as Lorenzo de Bonaventura says, they don't want to reboot. Reboots are messy. They want to stick to what they know, even though this is messy already. It'll be less messy to just reboot it, but whatever. I'd like to say they know what they're doing, but really they don't. We know that. We've had 5 movies already. We know they don't know what they're doing. There was talk of an Optimus Prime movie, because it was mentioned that like either Optimus or Bumblebee were going to be the characters to get their own movie, and obviously Bumblebee got it. I think Lorenzo de Bonaventura was like, we could do an Optimus movie, or we could do a Bumblebee sequel. And then at San Diego Comic Con during the summer, Peter Cullen made a remark about Optimus and what he has to do to get his own movie. So people seem to think an Optimus Prime movie is coming. I would love it. I would personally want it to be set between Age of Extinction and Last Night, because I want that space adventure thing I feel like I was robbed of. We definitely won't get that. At best, between Dark of the Moon and Age of Extinction, which, I could sell for. That seems like the most logical place to put it, because Optimus already has his flat nose truck, you just need to change his design a bit. As for Autobots, you could introduce new Autobots. I mean, they'd have to die, but you could do that. You could introduce new Decepticons. So there's a bunch they could do there, because there's a 5-year gap. You can play around with it a bit, especially since, Sam Witwicky's character is out of the picture. Kay Jager's not introduced yet, so there is a gap there to do a storyline. Whether they will or not, I'm not really sure. Very difficult to tell. A Bumblebee sequel, quite likely, but I think fans at this stage are kind of sick of Bumblebee, Bumblebee's a kid-friendly character, but he's at the forefront of the shows and now the movies, and it's because Peter Cullen's getting older. They need to just kind of push Bumblebee forward, because he's the second most popular character. Because, unfortunately, when Peter Cullen dies, Optimus Prime is going to sort of be pulled back. He's not going to be in the limelight as much, which is unfortunate. But Optimus Prime as a character isn't going to be at the forefront as much from in the next couple of years. Peter Cullen really wants an Optimus movie, so we could really see them doing that. Plus, to the general audience, an Optimus Prime movie sounds epic. Everyone would want that. That seems like the most logical choice to do, but maybe they won't. They could do a complete reboot movie, as I said. Unlikely. Who really knows? There's a film schedule on Paramount schedule for 2021. It's an unknown film. People think it's Transformers, and based on Hasbro's financial report, it could be Transformers 6, because 2021 was actually the G.I. Joe crossover's original release, but we don't really know. It's just hypothetical here. We know nothing. It's very hard to comment on this thing because the franchise is at this point now where it all depends on whether Bumblebee can save it, as he usually does. If it doesn't do well, if Bumblebee doesn't do well somehow, people are saying, we could wait 5 years before another Transformers movie. I think you could be waiting it'll be a long time. 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. 10 years maybe not, but it'll certainly be the longest time before we see a Transformers movie of any sort. And we're at this point now where they're breaking off into this reboot kind of still part of the same universe thing, so it's a bit messy, and as I say, it's very difficult to comment on without any real substantial evidence put forward yet. But we'll see how Bumblebee goes. Take it one movie at a time. That's what worked with the first 4 Transformers movies. Don't plan out 10 movies again and then mess up on the first attempt. Obviously, they could still do the spin-offs in a reboot style, but I don't know. I don't think they will. The reboot style only worked with Bumblebee because it's an 80s movie, and you're showing Cybertron, so you can give them their original designs without actually naming the characters, and since they're on Cybertron, it could be their alt modes. Like Shockwave and Soundwave, they're not going to be named in the Bumblebee movie. Like, they're Shockwave and Soundwave, but they're not going to be named. And that's good, because that appeals to both fans. That appeals to the people who wanted to be part of the Bayverse, because Shockwave and Soundwave will still... it won't affect the continuity with those characters' designs, and the G1 fans are happy because these designs have made it into the movie, but at the same time, they're not being defined as a different character. So, it's smart from that sense, but Bumblebee just got lucky in the sense that it's the only movie that got away with that. And they did a lot of rewriting with it as well. They hired a new screenwriter there not so long ago, and they were tweaking the script and everything, and there were several reshoots, so there's definitely a lot of work going on with this movie. It's just very confidential, and we know nothing, which is a kind of shock to the system coming out of the last night where we knew everything that was going on. But yeah, that's it really. There's really nothing else I can add to it yet. Yeah, I know for a fact, everyone's saying Transformers Bumblebee is going to be an emotional movie. For me, a different reason. Obviously, I grew up